Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I was going to cover on my temperature blanket that I did several years ago, but it's been getting a lot of attention in my older videos. And I just wanted to actually make a video of how I did it and all the little steps to do one if you wanted to make one yourself. So this was several years ago, but I still remember a lot of what I did and I have all my notes and everything left over from it. So without further ado, let's get started on how I did this. So back in like 2022 and even before that, when I got into crocheting, I kept seeing a lot of videos on making temperature blankets. And I thought that was such a cool idea where you do a section a day and, coordinate with temperatures and have a color and all that kind of stuff. But one of the flaws that I had seen that people were doing, or at least things that made me not want to do one, is it was very common for people to want to do 365. So they would chain 365 and, do that for like 365 stitches for each row, basically. And so every row would make a day, and you would do each one according to whatever temperature and range and all that stuff. Well, a lot of times I saw that people that did that is it would take so long to do each row every single day. And it's one thing to do that for a week or so, but to do that for an entire year is kind of challenging, I think. I mean, we all have lives, we all want to work on other things, and that will take up several hours of your time a week. So I never wanted to do that because of that. And they would also become very massive blankets in the end. So the amount of yarn and also just having to store something huge like that, which if you want to do something like that, go for it. But it was not something I wanted to do with just the way my projects add up and just something that was just been too much to take on at the time. But then I saw a TikTok video, and I will link this creator and all her videos because she was actually what inspired me to make this blanket that you see here. And her name is Pam Jones, and she had done one that was a lot more realistic in my mind, where she just did a square a day. And that's what you see here. I have a square, each one represents a day, and I also will show whole clips and the whole blanket. This thing's big, so you won't be able to see the whole thing. But she did one each day. And so she has a tutorial on how to do them. I will link that as well, on how to do each square and and you actually attach the squares as you go. So when you start making the square, and these are granny squares, so that makes it even easier. So when you start making the square, as you're working the second row around, you actually will be attaching. So not only is it easy, but you also get it sewn, so you're not having to do that as a completely separate step. So that was right up my alley. I love that idea, and it was very helpful. She has also done a temperature blanket last year, so she just finished doing that one, and it's kind of inspired me to think about making a temperature blanket myself, where she had done one color for one, like the center of one color, and then the border part another. So I guess she did like highs and lows for the day. I thought that was really fun, and hers turned out really cool. So that might be something I might consider doing in the future. So I also will link that video so you can see, and I'm sure you can find all her videos on how to do that. So in my situation, when I planned out my blanket, I kind of just took kind of a range of numbers. Where I live, it kind of varies. I mean, as you can probably see on my blanket when I show it, there's kind of random colors and random moments where it's like all of a sudden it jumped or all of a sudden it dropped. So like I just live somewhere where it kind of does that. So I definitely allowed there to be quite a bit of room. So you can figure out how you want to do yours. I did mine with just 10 gaps. The more you do though, if you want to do like maybe 5s, then you'll have to have a lot more colors, whereas I only had so much available to me at the time. I didn't have a whole lot of yarn, so that's something you'll want to consider as well, depending what colors you do. I tried to do rainbow all the way down, so the hottest started with red, then pink, then, orangish peaches, and kind of worked all the way down to purple, brown, and then I have this one that was a sparkly white yarn. So if you're considering of doing a lot more sections, you're going to have to pretty much double what I have here, or you can have bigger gaps. It's really up to you. Just keep in mind where you live and about what your temperature might range as, because those are the colors you're going to have a lot of. So I knew I was going to have quite a bit around here for the summertime. So I think had to end up getting more. So make sure that you keep that in mind when you're getting your yarn and what kind of yarn you're using, because this was going to be a year's worth that you're going to have to be prepared for. So make sure it's something that you can grab or have on hand in case you run out, because we really don't know what the weather's going to do. And in my case, I thought I was going to be doing a lot more burgundy, because sometimes in the summer it gets really hot. And in this instance, it did not get quite as hot as much as I thought it would. So keep that in mind. And I had this as a reference, so I took little sections of it in case I did run out. I had a way that if I went to the store, I had a way to match my colors. So it also made it easier for me to keep track of what the color was too for each temperature. So I most likely used, because I'm a huge acrylic person, so this most likely was a 4-weight acrylic yarn. Majority of these were more than likely Red Heart. So that's more of what I focused on. And because I did that, Red Heart and acrylic, I used an H hook. So keep in mind when you're choosing whatever color yarns and stuff, make sure they're all the same and that you're using a hook size that'll work great for all of them. And I would strongly encourage, because this is such a huge project, to not use the thickest yarn possible, because that will be making a massive blanket and that will use a lot of yarn and it will probably become very expensive. So just keep that in mind. Acrylic works just fine. You can use something like a lightweight yarn. Any of that will work just fine. So you can get really fun with this. I got into the middle of this customizing mine. So mine have hearts, and Pam Jones does have a tutorial. I can link that down below on how to, if you want to. I marked mine as my birthday, my husband's birthday, and our anniversary, and then also the day that we got, the anniversary of when we got our dog. So you could do different things like that if you want to, or if there was a good thing that happened that day and you want to have a heart on that day. I just thought it was a nice way to kind of personalize it a little bit more. I also have a border around my blanket, as you'll see in the picture, where I just took the white sparkly yarn that I showed, and I just did that all the way around the border. You can do whatever color yarn you want for the border in the very end. It's up to you. And then you can also, because then I'll know what year I did my temperature blanket. I did 2023. And she also shows on how to do that. I'll link that tutorial as well. So I thought it was kind of nice that you could kind of customize what year your blanket was, or you could get really creative and maybe do somebody's name if you're doing it for, maybe the year somebody was born, or a specific year, or whatever you want to do with that. That's the fun thing about crochet and making something yourself, is you can really customize it how you would like it to be. So when I was taking on this project, Pam Jones, she did this similar thing where she kept a notebook, and that's what helped me get started on this as well, as keeping a notebook. My stuff's everywhere, so don't mind me ruffling and stuff. So what she showed is mapping out your entire blanket, and I think that's what she does in her videos. And so you'll kind of have to figure out how many days of the year and map everything out, and then figure out how, that'll help you know how many squares long to make your blanket. And this part really not so much, but it also will tell you how many going down. So mine will start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 16. And then my row will start again here. And then I also incorporated when there was blocks, so that's what I kind of ended up doing, because it really didn't get below or very cold. So I ended up just using my sparkly white eventually to break up the months in the end, just because I was like, I don't think it's going to get that cold, and it really doesn't. So I did have that going on. But this also made it so that I could kind of color in and have an idea of what my blanket should be looking like. as I was going along. Towards the end, I got behind with my blanket, so I don't think I ever got to coloring this all in, which is fine. But it was just another way for me to be able to reference and have an idea of way my blanket was going to work. And it also allowed me to figure out, because I wanted to have the year, so it helps you kind of figure out how many squares and how to make that all work. So this was what I had to do. So for this year, for 2026, if you're planning on doing 2026, you're going to have to probably play around, look at how many months and how many days each month, and kind of figure out how to do all of that. So I got curious on how you guys would do it if you were planning on doing this temperature blanket for 2026. And it actually will map out the exact same. So if you're wanting to do 2026, this is what you're going to want to do. You'll want to do it 16 by 24. So you'll want to do 16 squares across each row. And that'll get you all the way. You'll have 4 blocks that will be blank, and if you're wanting to do the year, these will be also included. So, but if you don't want to do that, then you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You'll have 8 blank ones at the bottom. But that worked out great for you guys. So if you're wanting to do this, this is the outline you'll want to follow. This is exactly how you'll want to map it all out for you to figure out your months and everything. So it'll look along this line. You can change it if you want it to be a lot wider or a lot narrower. It's up to you. That just means you're going to have to like shift everything, and your blanket's going to be a lot longer. But this will work just fine right here. And then also what I did, and this is what she did too, is she wrote down, you know, the months, and I do them all the way. And I kind of had fun with decorating, but I did all the months all the way as well. That way, when I could log, because I went online and just looked for my area and just had, I mean, you can go any way with this, but just looked at what the high was. You can go online and search your specific area and it'll tell you. And so I would write down what the days were. So if it turns out, because it did halfway through the year, I got extremely busy and got extremely behind where I just didn't have time to work on this, it just made it so that I could still keep a log. And so even if I got pretty behind, I was able to catch up fairly quickly because these squares did whip up very fast. So even if you do get a little behind, you at least will know what your temperature and what color everything should be, and then be crossing them off, and then you won't lose track. So this was very helpful to keep this all in order in that way. So I really love that system that Pam came up with. And if you don't like the idea of having to do and look and search and figure out your temperature, you don't necessarily have to do it as a temperature blanket. You could do this as a mood blanket, so maybe what your mood is for the day, and have different colors for that. You could also just do it by the weather, so you could break it down if it seems a little overwhelming to do so many colors because you're going, you know, from 0 to 100 degrees. That seems too much. You can just break it down to, was it sunny? Was it cloudy? Was it rainy? Was it mostly, like, you could break it down just by what the weather felt like for the day. It seemed like it was like that. Like, it's your blanket, so you could have fun with however you want to do. And if you really want to, this is still a good idea for if you wanted to make a bunch of squares and create your own blanket. You could do that too. This doesn't even have to be a temperature blanket if you don't want to. If you like the idea of just making a whole bunch of squares and attaching them together, this is a great way to do that too. So pick a bunch of different colors and then just make the blanket. You, like I said, you can watch Pam's video on tutorial on how to do all the squares and just make your own thing. When I was making this blanket, I was posting week by week segments, so you can go ahead, check out my TikTok account, I'll link that. And somebody had commented because some of the portions looked like I was making like a pixelated blanket, so maybe like I was making a picture. You could go ahead and do that too. So figure out, like, if you wanted to make like a heart or something, you could do that as well with this. This is a great way, like I said, to bust out something quickly. It'll still take some time, but it's a lot faster than if you were to single crochet something. So another thing I've seen people do when it comes to temperature blankets is people will do, instead of those giant blankets I was talking about, people will do like these little snakes. So you would just kind of make, I'll show pictures, but you make like a little snake, and each round that you go around is a different color. So it's not quite as intense as doing the 365 stitches and single crocheting all the way across. It's a lot smaller, and you do get quite a long snake because you are still doing several rows, because you're doing a day each of the year. But it can be something fun that if you're doing it for a kid, or if you just want to have something that's a little smaller than a blanket, or you don't like blankets, or don't want a million of blankets like I do, that's another option as well. So if you're finding that it's like you want to do a temperature blanket, but you're like, oh, it's in the middle of January, or it's February, or it's much later, you're catching this video way late in the year, you can start it right now. Like, you don't have to do this at the beginning of the year. You can do this starting in July, but then you'll go until, June of the next year, up until that deadline. It's not a have to. I did it at the beginning of the year because I thought it would be fun for in the new year to be like, this is my blanket, and to start fresh. It just worked better for me. But it is not required that you have to do this at the beginning of the year. You can start at any time and finish it at any point. There's no requirement with that. So don't feel like that's going to hinder you from doing it, or you have to wait until next year. Get started on it when you want to start on it, and just stay committed to it, because I know halfway through it got a little tricky, especially when I got behind. It gets hard, but you got to think about the end result, and that you want to have this finished blanket. That's something that you have to keep in mind with any crochet project, is wanting to have the end result. So don't give up. Keep trying, and just try to stay on task and on schedule, because that'll really help with getting this completed. So I hope this video was helpful in at least giving you some advice and having an idea on how I made my temperature blanket. If you'd like to share, if you're making a temperature blanket this year, or if you're thinking about doing something along the lines of, crochet and temperatures, drop that in the comments below. Let me hear all about it. I want to hear what the type of things you guys are working on this year. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and that bell icon so you'll know about all of the different things that I'll have going on this channel, and you won't miss a video. Thanks guys for watching. Until next time, bye.